So guys, before I begin, if you can, please subscribe to my other channel, Crimecast. I'll put the link in the description below. I'd appreciate it if you go give it a follow. In the next couple of days, I'll be putting up a video there. As I said, I'll probably be posting once or twice a week on there, but big respect if you can subscribe over there.
In this next news story, 9 people who played a role in a violent turf war between 2 drug gangs in Nottingham have been jailed for more than 85 years between them. Amid a ruthless battle for control over the supply of drugs into the Meadows area, gang leader Tremayne McKenzie pointed a gun in a street, having cornered a rival gang member, Paula Usherwood, and pulled the trigger. However, the self-loading pistol failed to discharge and Usherwood escaped with her life. Jurors heard the late-night ambush took place after Usherwood had participated in the murder of someone known to McKenzie in a nearby street. 11 people, including Usherwood, were sentenced to more than 270 years in prison between them last year for the murder, which took place shortly after 10:20 p.m. on Wilfred Crescent on 10th of November 2021. This latest trial, the second arising from the police investigation into the events of that night called Operation Haversack, found on how McKenzie and his associate responded to the fatal ambush and the linked conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. I'll come to that case in a moment. So, outlining this case at Nottingham Crown Court, prosecutors said the drugs ran at the centre of both of the conspiracy to supply drugs, namely heroin and crack, and the conspiracy in relation to the possession of lethal weapons, including a pistol and at least one knife, was McKenzie, who was seeking to win back control of the local drugs trade following his release from prison. Lead prosecutor Christopher Donlan KC said the evidence of how Tremayne McKenzie operated, ably supported by the others charged to gain control of the lucrative drug dealing business in the Meadows area, came to a brutal head on the 10th of November 2021. A violent exchange at a pre-arranged meeting or a setup between members of a rival organised crime gangs took place on that street. This left one man dead, Michael Anton O'Connor, may he rest in peace. He was sent to the meeting by and in place of Tremayne McKenzie. When McKenzie lost contact with O'Connor, he and his group may not have known at that point that O'Connor had been killed, but they knew something must have happened and went looking for the other side. They were prepared for a serious confrontation, and the purpose was to confront, attack, and given what had just happened, it also became a retaliation. They had a gun and ammunition, and those convicted must have known that life would be endangered, and they had at least one knife. Within minutes, they were tracking down and cornering one of those who participated that we know was a murder. Tremayne McKenzie was caught on CCTV pointing a gun at that person, which is Paula Usherwood, and then fiddling with the gun because he had either misfired or jammed, and in an effort to get the gun to fire, it ejected a cartridge to the ground. The court heard that in order to be ready for such a swift reaction, McKenzie needed the weapon ready in advance, with jurors shown CCTV footage of the gang leader and his associates before, during, and after the confrontation with Usherwood. These defendants denied conspiracy to possess a firearm, ammunition, knives, and knives with intent to endanger life, insisting they had not been correctly identified on some of the CCTV footage. However, expert imagery analysis taken together with other pieces of evidence presented to jurors over many weeks of evidence led to guilty verdicts last month. The defendants were sentenced at Nottingham Crown Court, with those convicted of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs also learning their fate after a substantial amount of evidence was gathered by the police investigation team, including analysis of communications data and CCTV footage. So Tremayne McKenzie, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to Class A drugs, and he was found guilty at trial with conspiracy to possess a firearm with intent to endanger life, conspiracy to possess ammunition without a firearm certificate, and conspiracy to have a bladed article in public. He got 20 years and 3 months imprisonment with a 5-year extended license. Shaquille Dennis, he was found guilty at trial, conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, conspiracy to possess a firearm with intent to endanger life, conspiracy to possess ammunition without a firearm certificate. He got 10 years in prison. He must serve half of his sentence before he's eligible for release. You got Jimmy Reeves. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. You got Melissa Lynn. She got 8 years in prison. You got Kishan Vyas. You got 9 years and 2 months in prison. You got Elkedi Watson. Got 4 years and 5 months in prison. And there were 3 other people involved in the criminal activity who were also sentenced for a combined total of 21 years and 11 months, and their identities have not yet been reported by the judge. In passing the sentences, the trial judge, James Sampson, said, Class A drugs cause crime and they blight communities and wreck families and destroy individuals, as this sorry tale illustrates. McKenzie, it was inevitable that you and your gang would come into a violent conflict with other groups dealing Class A drugs in the Meadows. You were willing to use a live firearm to further your cause. So I'm sure the McKenzie group were prepared to use violence and intimidation to establish themselves as dealers in the Meadows. Your activities antagonized your rivals, which culminated in the tragic death of Michael Anton O'Connor. After gathering your troops, you went looking out for your rivals and all were knowingly in possession of a loaded pistol that was capable of a shot being fired. So following the sentencing, Detective Sergeant Steve Ellie of East Midlands Special Operations Unit said the events of that night revealed the brutality that two gangs were prepared to use against each other when one gang moved in to take over the drug dealing territory in the Meadows area of Nottingham. I hope this case shows how serious it can be to get involved in the supply of drugs, and it can lead to a cycle of violence which ultimately, as in this case, can result in a person losing their life and others spending a significant portion of theirs behind bars. Indeed, prior to the second Operation Haversack trial, 11 defendants from last year's trial were jailed for more than 270 years. These related sentences added to the hefty total, and there can be no stronger measure than those seeking to profit from drug dealing. By dismantling these drug gangs, we put an end to the harm they were bringing to the Meadows area and further afield. The volume of drugs these defendants involved in should not be underestimated, and their contribution to serious harm and violence, which is inextricably linked to the drugs trade, is undeniable. So Operation Haversack has been a relentless penetration for unorganised crime groups in Nottingham, which, coupled with the wider drug supply element of this investigation, known as Operation Majestic, which has required hours and hours of work from a multitude of different policing teams, including the serious and organised crime units. He said, this was a very much a joint effort in every sense, but I'd like to thank my dedicated team of officers and staff from the East Midlands Special Operations Unit who worked tirelessly on this investigation in order to build a compelling case. So guys, as I said, this incident or this case was the culmination of what happened after the murder of Michael Anton O'Connor. So if you're not aware of this case, I'll go through some of it now.
9 members have been jailed for a total of more than 260 years after a Nottingham man was fatally stabbed in a case of mistaken identity. Michael Anton O'Connor was attacked outside a property in Wilford Crescent in West the Meadows shortly after 10:30 on the 10th of November 2021. A 31-year-old from Alexandra Park died at the Queen's Medical Centre after police found him collapsed on the pavements. A subsequent police investigation found the murder was the culmination of a drug war which had broken out between two rival organised crime groups, each vying for the control of the local drugs market, which was worth around £1 million a year. Michael, who was known to many as Anton, was well known and well liked in the area and was tasked to calm the tensions between the two gangs. However, his killers mistook him for their intended target, which was a Nottingham drugs kingpin, and it cost Michael his life. In October, 11 people went on trial at Nottingham Crown Court accused of his murder, and on the 12th of June, 9 of those defendants were found guilty of murder. So I just want to say rest in peace, Michael, and my condolences go out to your family. So this is what happened. So the deadly team of attackers were brought to Nottingham from Manchester to take down this rival kingpin who had rapidly closed in on an organised crime group's turf in the Meadows. Manchester drugs lord Benjamin Taylor recruited the hitman, carefully picked from his dealers to teach a lesson to the drugs kingpin, threatening the profitable turf of Nottingham organised crime group he supplied with wholesale amounts of super-strength cannabis. Taylor, whose last conviction was for serious offence, arranged for Joseph Boscombe, Joshua Agbula and Michael Mingles to travel to Nottingham by car to carry out the attack on a rival dealer or on one of his associates. The trio were chosen due to their size, sheer aggression and their willingness to use weapons and extreme violence, and they were deliberately selected to ensure that they had no links to Nottingham and could carry out an attack and murder without it directly being linked back by law enforcement to Nottingham defendants Jerome Sheard and Leonard Ward's group. During the build-up to the attack, Taylor also travelled from Manchester with others to a pre-arranged meeting with Ward to oversee from a distance the final preparations for the plan and provide further orders to Boscombe and, through him, to his team holed up for hours at a house in Williford Crescent West, which was the registered address of Ciaran and his mother, Carla Maguire. Shortly after 10:15 that night, it was not the leader of the rival group who headed to the meeting and get ambushed at Mickledon Close in the Meadows, but it was the soon-to-be-deceased Michael. Unbeknownst to him, instead of meeting to calm tensions, a carefully planned and organised murderous ambush awaited him at the hands of a number of armed males, seemingly keen on settling the dispute once and for all. The hit team were caught on CCTV as they collected weapons and put on masks as they were driven on a circular route to murder by the defendant, Paula Usherwood, so I'll come on to her in a moment. And as the hit squad left, Carla Maguire, on the direction of Jurors, cut the CCTV feed and attempted to wipe previous incriminating footage from the day at her home. Minutes after leaving, Usherwood returned at speed in a vehicle and the hit team and drove straight to the top of a pre-arranged meeting point in Mickledon Close, where she disembarked the now heavily armed and masked hit team comprising of Boscombe, Meadows, Agbula and Michael Maguire, who is another son of Carla Maguire. The group hid in an alleyway in the back of Pitcairn, and the mother of three, Usherwood, from Beeston, was then present in her vehicle on Pitcairn to meet Anton as he arrived. Although she has never explained what the last conversation was with him, she, assisted by others, was able to keep Michael Anton O'Connor in Pitcairn long enough for her to summon the attack by sounding a car horn repeatedly and ringing the hidden Michael Maguire. As the hit squad descended and ambushed the victim from their hiding place at the top of the close, two of them, Bosco and Michael Maguire, stopped to brutally attack an innocent passerby, hitting him repeatedly around the head and body with a hammer and pistol, whipping him with a handgun. Michael was then surrounded by the heavily armed and masked Meadows, Agbula, Boscombe and Michael Maguire, who interrogated him as he stood alone and unarmed. Usherwood used her car as a weapon to block Michael's every attempt to escape. As Michael lay dying, the Manchester hitmen got into Usherwood's car. She took them to an address in the Meadows and then guided them to Jurors' car, which was waiting for them to ferry them back to Manchester. So the sentencings are as follows. Benjamin Saylor was 38 in Manchester. He was the one who sent the team of dealers from Manchester down to Nottingham to carry out the murder, and he was jailed for 32 years. Leonard Ward was 42. He was the head of the Meadows-based organised crime gang that ordered the killing. He was jailed for 32 years. Joseph Boscombe was 41 in Manchester. He was part of the hit team sent to carry out the murder. He was jailed for 32 years. Joshua Agbula, who's from Blackburn, he's 30. He was also part of the hit team to carry out the murder, and he was jailed for 31 years. Carla Maguire, who's 53 from the Meadows, was linked to the Meadows-based organised crime group that ordered the killing. She lived next to where Mr. O'Connor was murdered and was accused of turning off a CCTV at a property before the attack. She was jailed for 20 years. Michael Meadows, who's 21 from Manchester, was part of the hit team sent to carry out the murder and is believed to have dealt the fatal blow. He was jailed for 28 years. Jerome Sherd, who's 31. He was Leonard Ward's right-hand man and the son of Carla Maguire and a member of the gang that ordered the killing, and he was jailed for 31 years. You got Michael Maguire, who's 35, from the Meadows. He's the son of Carla Maguire, living with her at the property next to where the murder took place, and he was jailed for 32 years. And Paula Usherwood, who's 39, she was the one that set up the ambush by meeting the intended target on the morning of the murder, and she was jailed for 30 years. So the mother of three, Paula Usherwood, was told by a bystander in the public gallery during the sentencing to rot in prison as she was led away to start her lengthy prison sentence. Seconds after she was sentenced to a 30-year minimum term, somebody in the crowd shouted, "Rot in prison, you stupid." An angry outburst was in the back of her own previous deafening disruption in court, so Usherwood, who ran an alcoholic lollipop business at the time of the murder, left the family of Michael Anton O'Connor sickened when she shouted from the dock, "At least I'm not walking around with a picture of my dead son on my t-shirt. I'm still alive and got my family around me." So the family of Mr. O'Connor, who attended every day of the trial, related in their victim impact statement by saying, "A heinous act which has left our family feeling sick to their stomach at the lack of remorse shown by this defendant. We cannot fathom how someone could be so flagrantly audacious, atrocious and hateful towards the victim's family. At times our family were made to feel like we were on trial and an unwelcome spotlight rather than the victim's family." But the defense said that Usherwood was diagnosed with an ear condition which led to her bleeding from the ear, and this was not diagnosed properly for a number of days at the prison that she's in Derbyshire. He said her condition was left untreated for 10 days until the prison administered antibiotics, and the side effects was that it caused psychotic episode. So basically that was her excuse for the outburst. The family also stated that at times we were made to feel like we were on trial. And they sent a message to Joseph Boscombe, who was obviously part of the Manchester hit team, who ambushed their family member, Mr. O'Connor, and they addressed the comments to him. They said, Joseph Boscombe on June the 12th, when the jury found him guilty of the murder of our son, he showed no remorse and instead chose to make threats to kill our remaining son in open court. Imagine hearing the murderer of one son threaten the other. Words cannot describe the heartache and devastation. So guys, this is a new story coming from Nottinghamshire Ways. Once again, I just want to say rest in peace, Michael, and my condolences go out to your family. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.